All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast. I say it so fast, Jon Tayler. I say it fast, and I think I've done that before where I stumbled over it and I did something out of order, and you caught it. And I don't remember what it was, but a couple months back, I feel like I did that. But either way, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh,
everything. I know. See, I messed up the whole rhythm, John. I didn't even finish my intro to get to you.
Goodness.
I know. We're off to a great start here, folks. But coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. Up there, though, my good friend, Fangraphs.com's Jon Tayler in
New York City.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Not too bad. It's getting hot here in Knoxville. That's been a welcome addition. I got to see some minor league baseball. Went back home to Atlanta for the weekend. The Braves were on a road trip. Taking care of the Royals, so I was treated with a AAA Gwinnett Stripers game. Charlie
Very
Culberson
nice.
playing some first. The Stripers are awful, John. They lost this game to the Memphis Redbirds, but pretty packed place. And as I texted you, minor league baseball is perfect. It's just whenever you have an opportunity to go, folks. I mean, go to Major League Baseball games if that's in your city too, but minor league, it's the vibe I think is better. I prefer a minor league vibe. I love them both, but the minor league vibe is just, I don't know. It's just it's a cooler deal that I'm a fan of.
I like how just shambolic minor league baseball is, because my minor league baseball team of not necessarily choice, more necessity, is the Brooklyn Cyclones, because they're the only minor league team in the five boroughs. The Staten Island Yankees are now an independent league team. The Staten Island Ferry Hawks or Pizza Rats or the Staten Island Elise Stephanics. No, wait, no, she's upstate New York. The Staten Island Magas. Let's just go with that. But last week I was in the Hudson Valley, just upstate from here, just about an hour north of the city, where the Hudson Valley Renegades play. They are the Yankees' high A affiliate. They used to be rookie ball, but as part of the minor league contraction and reorganization, they got bumped up to low A, or I'm sorry, to high A. And I don't know, have you been to either a Cyclones game or to any minor league baseball? And have you been to a Cyclones game before? In Brooklyn?
No, but I've been by the stadium. So when I was in New York last 5 years ago, I went by. It was at night, and they were not there yet. It was early April, but they were not there the days that I was there. But I went by, made sure to go see it, and the park and everything. It's a bucket list place to go to.
It's a nice park, but since I'm used to Cyclones games, they're a pretty professionally run organization, in part because I think they're the only minor league team in the five boroughs, and by being there on Coney Island, they have to, by sheer default of where they are, have to put together a pretty compelling product rather. The Hudson Valley Renegades don't have to do that. And I'm not saying this to crap on the Renegades. I think, that's, again, minor league baseball is fun because it's just silly. But, I went to a game last week that was Thirsty Thursday, so they had beer specials. Great.
Okay.
$1 hot dog night. Fantastic. Love a $1 hot dog. I heard some people around me complaining that the $1 dogs were steamed instead of grilled. People, it's a $1 dog. What on earth do you expect? It's... Wow. First of all, what do you think is inside the hot dog to begin with? Like, do you think grilling or steaming it makes any difference?
I've never wanted to know, and I will continue burrowing my head deep in the sand on what. Yeah,
if any listeners actually know what goes into hot dogs at baseball games, please kindly do not contact us. I don't want to know. I am so much happier being ignorant there.
Correct.
But everything else about the whole thing had the vibe of like an amusement park run by bored teenagers. Whereas, it was Prohibition Night, quote unquote, because every minor league team now has 50 million theme nights. But
it was Thirsty Thursday and Prohibition Night.
Yeah, and not only did they not ever really, I guess someone never kind of put two and two together there and went, wait. But the only sign that it was Prohibition Night, and on their website it said Prohibition Night with no explanation of what that would entail. Nothing like. There weren't any special uniforms. There wasn't like a bobblehead giveaway or any other kind of giveaway. The only giveaway they had was just some T-shirts that they hadn't given all of them away 2 games earlier. The only
we take you to Hudson Valley Jail just to reminisce. Anyone who orders a beer is like, no beer,
no,
jail.
Scared straight time.
Yeah.
There was like the only indication you got that it was Prohibition night was when they would flash it on the video board they flashed it on the video board a couple of times over the course of the game, but never with anything beyond that. It always just this image on the video board that just said Prohibition night, and then it would just move on to something else, and it was like, what is Prohibition? Like, I still don't know what Prohibition night is. There was at some point, like, I think they were team employees. I'm not 100% sure on that. Dancing on one of the dugouts between innings. Every minor league team does their between innings entertainment in costumes. But like, for some reason, it was the Renegades mascot, who's a raccoon. Someone in a perfectly fine looking SpongeBob like costume, like you'd see at a kid's birthday party. Then someone in like the laziest Mario costume I've ever seen, where it's just a red shirt and blue overalls and a plumber hat, but no mustache, no nothing else. It was just like, it was like a Mario costume you'd get at like a dollar Halloween store, where it's like, it doesn't even say Mario on the front of the costume bag. It would say like Italian plumber character or something. And then the rest were in a hodgepodge of like superhero costumes, but like half finished. Like, there was a dude in a Black Panther kind of onesie thing, but with no mask. There was a guy in a full Spider-Man outfit, but black for some reason, like not the red and blue, but just black.
Big Spidey-Man 3 fan, like,
yeah,
really
I guess
Spider-Man?
the symbiote Spider-Man suit. There was a Thor who didn't have a hammer or anything on his head, just the kind of like armor thing on the front. And the dance they were just kind of like doing a really lazy can on top of the dugout. I still don't really get
is tremendous
why.
content.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring it back to everything, like, go to a minor league game if you can, because that is the minor league experience, is just sitting there with your cheap beer and your cheap hot dog, surrounded by 750 other people. I paid $6 to get in the door for that game. It took all of 2.5 hours. There were maybe 2 good players on the field the entire time. But it's fun. It's fun. Yeah. It is such a low-key experience that there's something really nice and relaxing about it. Like, if you're just willing to go with the flow, which is to say, accept that no one seems to be in charge, you're going to have a great time.
It's really relaxing. I wish for the Smokies here, they could institute like a yoga option. So my wife can just like do some yoga in the outfield in the corner. That would be cool. When we go to games, like, do different things, experiment, do like stuff where it's like, hey, here's the reading area for us. So when you want to move around, just keep getting weirder and weirder, because like you said, the main thing with minor league baseball is that it's extremely laid back, which is a very cool thing. So go support minor league baseball. Go support college baseball, Major League Baseball. It's all
always
fun.
Go support minor league baseball, especially those teams need it so much to continue existing.
For sure. Jon Tayler, don't forget, folks, you can watch us. If you're watching us now, thank you. And hit that like and subscribe button on youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff as we reach closer and closer to that 1,000 subscriber threshold on YouTube. You can always email us. So if you have any Major League Baseball questions you'd like for us to answer on a future show, you can email us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. As always, leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if that is indeed how you are listening to this very show. We record this on Wednesday, go up every Thursday during the Major League Baseball season, so look out for that for Major League Baseball content on this very feed each and every Thursday morning. Jon Tayler.
Yes.
We have some actual baseball stuff. I had to do a double take. Like, this isn't even on my notes, so we have to just. I was just perusing some differentials and stuff like that, and I was like, man, the Rangers are number 2 now in Major League Baseball in run differential through 15 games ish.
They've had a lot of blowouts from what I recall.
But it was just one of those where I'm like, I wonder if that's a sustainable thing. So I'm going to keep an eye on that for the Rangers. But John, we start with our favorite. Take graphs. Week 2.
Yes.
Your take of the week. The last week with the St. Louis Cardinals missing the playoffs was a banger, and it looked like it might be true. The 8-11 Cardinals. The Pirates sitting there at 12-7 being feisty. Yes. Even the Reds are feisty at like 7-12. The Brewers might clinch by July, even if they don't want to, with that 20th ranked payroll, and they might just continue trading players to get out of this. They're like, what are we doing? This is not what we wanted. But Jon Tayler, what is your take of the week, sir?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Rangers, because I think what I've landed on is I think Texas can win the West.
Ooh.
I think they're a legitimate AL West contender already. And again, it's only been 18 games, but you just mentioned the run differential, plus 43 right now. The only two teams, only one team has a better run differential right now, and that's the Tampa Bay Rays at plus 83. The Cubs, weirdly, the Cubs and Brewers right behind the Rangers, plus 39, plus 35.
And the Cubs are a terrible home team for whatever reason, I think, right?
Yeah, but they just finished off a sweep of the A's. They're 11-6. They're looking pretty good so far. But can
you look at the A's point differential through 15 games?
It's going to be a very large number that's going to make me upset.
It's minus 70 something, I know.
It's minus 86.
Is it really?
Yeah, because they lost 12-2 today to the Cubs.
There's no question they're the worst team in baseball. This is like the A's.
It's them or the A's. Them or the A's. It's them or the Rockies.
I think it's the A's, man. The Rockies at least have a little bit of talent, and they still have that home field advantage where they're going to win some stupid games because of just playing in Coors Field.
Let's not forget the Nationals either. Let's not leave them out of this particular
The Nationals
picture.
are not. The A's, we don't need to go. We don't need to relitigate the A's. Back to the Rangers, John.
Okay. Yes, the Rangers. So I like what they've done so far. That lineup has, I know we talked a lot about, is this lineup good enough to contend both after they signed Semien and Seager and then going into this offseason? So far, so good. I mean, they're going to struggle, like we said last week, replacing Seager for however long he's out. That's just not a guy you replace easily. And right now they have issues with Adolis Garcia slumping, Nathaniel Lowe. We have realized now.
It's going to be a tradition unlike any other, John. We're never going to know.
But here's the fun thing. It's Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Lowe. And do you know how I know that?
How?
They're brothers.
Oh.
I didn't know this. Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Lowe are brothers.
I didn't know this. Which was the one who went to Mississippi State? Is that Lau? Or is that one of the
Brandon
Lows?
Lowe went to Maryland.
Okay, then it's one of the Lows. That's the Mississippi State guy.
Okay, well, I'm actually just, since I have Nathaniel Lowe here. Nathaniel Lowe went to Mississippi State. Okay. So Lowe is a 102 OPS plus right now. Fine. Like I said, Adolis Garcia below 100. They're getting nothing. They're getting really nothing out of the outfield when you add in Ezekiel Duran, Leody Taveras, Robbie Grossman, Josh Smith, Padres, Reds, and I want to say there's probably at least two other teams in there. Travis Jankowski. Forgot the Phillies, Mets, and Mariners for Jankowski. This is already the sixth team of his career, and he's only been in the league like 7 seasons. A surprisingly competent bat off the bench, but they definitely need some more there. But Semien has looked great. The combination of Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver, although I guess Heim gets much more time behind the plate than Garver does, and Garver's currently in the injury list, has been great. Josh Young has looked very, very good in his, I guess we'll call it his rookie season. I know he was up last year, but he didn't get that much run. I think they still do need another bat somewhere in there, in particular when you consider that there's not really, the Rangers aren't a team, with the exception of Seager, that has anyone kind of sitting on the injured list, and I guess to a certain extent Garver, where you're like, oh, when that guy gets back, this isn't like a Padres with Fernando Tatis situation where it's like, oh, that offense isn't really clicking right now, but they're also about to get Fernando Tatis Jr. back. That's not the case with the Rangers. And that extends down into their minor league system. They don't really have anyone at AAA, I think, who's in any position to make any kind of impact. I would say the same is probably true of AA, unless Evan Carter really takes a big step forward. I think it's probably the only guy down there who you're looking at as a potential difference maker. So obviously the big thing for the Rangers right now is just that how much better the pitching is this year than last. And obviously that's going to happen when you do stuff like give Jacob deGrom a lot of money. But some of it too is just, Andrew Heaney and Nate Eovaldi have both been roughly league average, but that's still a big step forward from the likes of, what they were running out last year between Glenn Otto and Dane Dunning. And I mean, you look at the final ERA plus totals, Martin Perez was easily the staff leader at 136, but then you had John Gray at 99, Glenn Otto at 85, Dane Dunning at 88. Then you add in fill-in options like Taylor Hearn, who had a 77 ERA plus, Spencer Howard at 54, Cole Raggins at 80. Those are guys I think for the most part, maybe not so much Howard anymore, but those are guys that I think were more considered to be part of the Rangers' future, kind of mentioned in the same, maybe a step down, but in the same general breath as Jack Leiter and maybe Kumar Rocker. But, they were not doing the job when the Rangers asked them to do it last year. And I think just having those guys here now makes such a huge difference. And I think, the big thing for me is, like, I think Texas is a real genuine AL West contender so long as those guys, Eovaldi, deGrom, Perez, Gray, and Heaney, all stay healthy together. because the second they don't, that's when you're going back to Dane Dunning and Glenn Otto and Taylor Hearn and Cole Raggins, and that's where it all starts to fall apart. Because again, this lineup, I think it has performed a little better than expected, but there are still some holes. I don't really think anyone is expecting guys like Ezekiel Duran or Leody Taveras to be anything really better than even league average, maybe roughly. I imagine Young is probably gonna revert to some kind of mean. I mean, he's got a strikeout rate nearing 30%, and he's only walked 5 times in roughly 70 plate appearances, which is not great. Presumably there's going to be some adjustment for him coming. And again, Seager is out for the next at least 3 to 4 weeks. That's a really big hole to try to fill. But I think the biggest reason you can pencil in the Rangers as real contenders right now is because look at the rest of the AL West. Houston is in a similar problem where Texas is, where that lineup just is not very dangerous without a healthy Jose Altuve. The Angels are the Angels. For as much as Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani can do, and it's been pretty good so far, that's still a 500 team where you're also not really seeing much in the way of kind of surprise, better than expected performance. I think the rotation is actually better than I think we all predicted to a certain degree between Ohtani, Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers. That is a pretty good 1-2-3 right there. But the offense, I don't think has really been there. And defensively, the Angels are just kind of a mess. And I think that's a big part of why they called up Zach Neto from AA to be their new starting shortstop. We already mentioned Oakland, which, dear God, that is a really bad team. And then Seattle, which is one of the lower scoring teams in baseball right now. Only 85 runs scored. That's pretty middle of the pack. But that's a big thing for Texas. They have 112 runs scored. Only Tampa Bay has scored more runs than the Rangers have. That's really impressive. And do I necessarily think that'll hold all season? No, I think that team will go through dips just like every other team does. But there does seem to be useful enough of a core there that if the pitching stays healthy too, I don't see any reason why this team can't be at least around 500, if not better than it, and stay in this race, as long as possible. Again, because Houston has given every team in the AL West that much of an opening with Altuve out. That has turned out to be a really critical injury for them, on top of the fact that they're not really getting, I think, the production they would have expected or wanted out of Jose Abreu quite yet. I mean, he's had a really slow start to the season. Jeremy Pena's had a really slow start to the season. Alex Bregman has had a really slow start to the season. Chas McCormick is one of their few bright spots. They just lost him to the injured list with a back problem indefinitely. Like, there are real issues going on in Houston. They're not getting offense outside of Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker right now. That also will change, but again, it opens up room for other teams to make a move if possible. Ultimately, are the Rangers a favorite? No. I mean, the division odds on our site still go to Houston. They have a 42% chance to win the division, but Texas is right there after them at 28%. The Angels at 20%. Here's the real surprise to me: the Mariners all the way down at 10% to win the AL West by our projections. That is a team I think that had to take advantage of that slow Houston start. Just 25%. That is a lower playoff odds. Those are lower playoff odds than the Marlins and the Cubs right now. We are down on Seattle, I think, in part because the Angels and Rangers look, I think, not necessarily better than we projected, but look like they're not going to be immediate pushovers.
Well, I think when you look around the league, right, like when we talk about different teams in our preview series, you think about certain situations, and one of the concerns you outlined with Houston was, look, they're getting older. A lot of important bodies have departed here. You lose Altuve for the first few months of the season, and there's just not a lot of depth in Houston anymore. A lot of those guys have aged out of this farm. There's not just ready-made, young 23, 22-year-old star and waiting guys in Houston anymore. Right. They were, like, the best case scenario, the best team in baseball. But we talked about, like, there was a path where if injuries mounted up, like, this is a team that could really have a season from hell and just miss the playoffs altogether, because they're counting on a lot of veteran guys to make it through and keep this up. And because the AL West is going to be weird, our biggest concern, though, with the Rangers was, like, health. It's like, hey, they spend a lot of money. They are very top-heavy. But if they're a healthy team for the majority of the year, then, like, yeah, they should be there. And right now, like you said, outside of Seager, they're healthy. The Angels are just, like, the one where I'm like, this is just early, middle of the road, 500 baseball. You look at it, Anthony Rendon's healthy right now. You go up and down the list, and you're like, all right, we'll see. We'll see on this pitching staff. We'll see on that. I'm not a big believer in that. And then I just imagine some sort of meme with the Mariners where it's like, what did it cost for Jared Kelenic to become a really good MLB hitter, and then it's like the Mariners are just like everything, because with the rise of Kelenic, who we'll talk about in a second, the rest of the offense has not followed suit, Jon Tayler. But I like it. Rangers, serious contender to win the AL West this year. I think it's going to be a fun division to monitor. I don't think even if the Astros get back, and folks, let me remember, when people throw this out there, it's a common talking point in mid-April, is like, hey, it's early. Folks, these games matter just as much come November, or October, September. Like, these games matter. So when you're dropping these, you're putting yourself in a hole. You say that, not everyone just becomes the Washington Nationals of 2019, where it's or
the A's from every year from like 2003 till about 2015.
Right. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're 25 games in, and they're an average to below average ball club. Some of those teams never get right. The majority, I would say, of those teams, when they show you who they are, that might be kind of who they are, and that might be who the Astros are this year.
It could, and like in a similar vein, like, it's early, it's April. The Rays already have a 4.5 game lead in the AL East. Mm-hmm. Those games still count. Like, that is a 4.5 game deficit that the Blue Jays need to make up, or a 5 game deficit that the Orioles or Yankees need to make up. That is an already existing gap. And again, I bring up our playoff odds because those playoff odds take those games into consideration while also projecting forward. So those games are baked into our odds. When I say, the Mariners only have a 25% chance of making the playoffs, that is including the games they've already played. That takes into account the fact that they got off to an 8-10 start. I think they're playing right now, or that game just finished, so I don't know if they're still 8-10 right now, being Wednesday evening. But regardless, those are the odds going forward from this point. We have Seattle projected to win just 80 games going forward, in part because they got off to an 8-10 start. That changes the calculus going forward.
For sure. Zach Neto, though, called up by the Angels. What are your early thoughts on him, and what do you think he can be for Los Angeles? And should fans of the Angels look at this of like, hey, we can still trust in some of these young guys, even if they're still permanently scarred from the Joe Adele situation?
Yeah, and I think what's curious with the Angels is this is very much their thing, so to speak. That they are, at least on the Perry Manassian Angels, their current general manager, very much a believer in calling guys up or pushing guys through the system when they show they're ready, and not really worrying about, how old are they or whatnot. Neto is only 22 years old. We actually share a birthday, except he is 14 years younger than I am, which doesn't at all make me feel like I want to crawl into a coffin. He was only drafted last summer out of Campbell University, not exactly a baseball powerhouse. His minor league...
They did give Tennessee a run for their money in the regionals last year.
And there is our contractually obligated mention of Tennessee baseball.
I think they had a player drafted in the first round last year.
Sure. It was Neto.
Oh, it was Neto. I guess it was Neto.
He was the number 13 pick of last year's draft.
That's insane. That was Neto. I just put 2 and 2 together. I just forgot. I was like, they actually had a really good player who gave us hell. Yeah, that was like Neto. Okay, there you go.
Big South represent.
Yeah.
His minor league career consists of a grand total of 44 games and 201 plate appearances. Like, this is a rush promotion by pretty much any definition. But again, this is what the Angels did last year with Chase Silseth, who was the 11th round pick, or the 11th pick. He was a pick in an 11th round pick in the 2021 draft out of Arizona. He was making his major league debut a year later. Logan O'Hoppe,
Don't ask me, John.
I was going to say, it is O'Hoppe. So
okay.
I really hope it's not just O'Hoppe, because O'Hoppe is so much funnier. Logan O'Hoppe, a 23rd round pick back in 2018, obviously back with the Phillies. They got him as part of the Brandon Marsh deal. He has never played in AAA. The Angels brought him straight up from AA to the majors. He's their starting catcher now, and he's played pretty well. So I think in that sense, this is kind of par for the course of the Angels, is if they see a young guy who's making an impact down in the minors, and they feel like they have a hole in the major league roster that young player can fill, they're going to do it. And in Neto's case, that is shortstop, because the Angels didn't really have a shortstop. That was kind of one of the things going into the season, where when you looked at the Angels depth chart, you're kind of looking at shortstop and going, what exactly is the plan here? Because is it really David Fletcher? Because that's not a good idea. Turns out the Angels agree. David Fletcher is not a good idea. He's the guy who lost his roster spot in Neto's place. Part of this, too, is that the other options are guys like Luis Rengifo or playing Gio Urshela at short, or maybe pushing Brandon Drury over there. Those are not viable solutions, and the Angels are actually in a position where, again, every game counts for them. Where they are, given where they are in the West, in the division, where they are relative to the rest of the league, every win counts for them. I'm not a prospect guy, so I can't say with any certainty to any degree or another whether Neto is a good call-up, whether he's ready for this, what necessarily he'll do for them. Just reading through the scouting report from our top 100 list, where he was number 61, I believe, on our top 100. A 50 future value player. If you don't know what future value is, it's basically our number on the 20/80 scouting scale as to where we can expect a guy to end up career-wise. So that 50 future value basically means an everyday starter. We have him projected as an everyday second baseman with plus grades or plus grades on his run tool and on his future hit and power tools. Right now, it's a lot of 40 and 45 across the board, so you're talking about a guy who probably is not... this isn't... And I should know, too, this was not a guy along the lines of, Julio Rodriguez, who was just going to be a star from the get-go, or Adley Rutschman, That's not Zach Neto. That, again, coming from a small school and, not a guy who has superb tools across the board. He has very good tools. Our Eric Longenhagen, our prospect expert, noted that Neto has a good feel for contact despite a really big swing. And if you haven't seen him swing, he does a huge 30s style leg kick.
Yes.
That is actually really fun to watch.
This is hilarious that it's the same guy. Because I was like, it can't be the same guy who was just there last year. Is immediately. I could not believe I didn't put two and two together.
And that's the thing. This is what the Angels do. If they think you're ready, you're ready. And they don't really care whether or not, it's almost the polar opposite of the Nationals, who will just let guys repeat levels 3 years in a row before actually moving them up. Regardless, I wouldn't be able to put necessarily, comparable on Neto. Eric notes that, he has the same kind of leg kick and hand load as Javi Baez, but I assume not nearly the same level of inability to stop chasing. But I think what you could probably expect is something along the lines of league average offense and probably something close to league average defense. That doesn't sound very exciting, but keep in mind, again, the Angels were using David Fletcher at shortstop. They were using Luis Rengifo there. They were using, they didn't have even so much as that. So I think for the Angels, it's let's shore this up. Let's see what this kid can do. And maybe he gets hot and clearly they love his talent. They love what he can do. So I think they feel like the floor here is at least better than replacement level. And the ceiling is quite a bit higher than that, which is more than can be said for any of their other options. So I think with that in mind, it is a sensible thing for the Angels to do, especially because this early in the season, there's no real trade to be struck, to improve yourself at a position that isn't working right now. You just kind of have to sort through your internal options. And then, if the Angels are still in this position 2 months from now or 3 months from now, or, as we get closer to the trade deadline, maybe then we start talking about, okay, what do they actually do at shortstop if Neto isn't working? But for now, give it to Neto and see what he can do.
I mean, it's a hilarious. I'm a fan of just teams doing different things. Some teams operate like the Braves, some teams operate like the Astros, some teams operate like the Yankees, some teams operate like the Rays, some teams operate like the Angels, where they're just fuck it, call them up. I appreciate that. Now, as a prospect, would I be a little bit nervous? Sure. Does my man Ben Joyce being in that system right now, and someone who's probably a prime candidate to get a summer call up for the Angels, does that scare me? Sure.
I'd say it's 100% Joyce makes his MLB debut this season, unless he gets hurt.
I just don't know what you're waiting on. And shout out to the Joyce family, because his brother just, I think, blew out his arm.
Well, I think too that if you look at potential problem areas for the Angels, the bullpen is definitely one of them. And I think that a guy like Joyce, who throws as hard as he does, who has the stuff he does, if the Angels really are in this chase, and I think what you're saying there is to a similar point. It's if you're an Angels fan, you want this team to be aggressive with these kinds of guys too. Mm-hmm. This is probably their last season with Shohei Ohtani, and by probably I mean almost certainly. Mike Trout is obviously not getting younger. There is not really that much else when it comes to elite young talent on that team, with the exception of maybe some of the pitching staff. This is a time for them to get aggressive. And I know, like you said at the beginning, there are some Angels fans out there scarred by Joe Adell, but I think the thing with Adell too was we had plenty of evidence in the minor leagues that he had not really mastered any kind of plate discipline or pitch recognition. And that really showed when he got to the major league level and was just swinging and missing at everything. There's a chance Adele is just a quad A bat, but that, may not reflect so much on the Angels as him. But either way, I think, you have to treat every prospect as their own individual player, obviously. And I think with Neto, I imagine the Angels have not seen that same sense of like, oh, this guy, really, he'll demolish a fastball, but if you just keep throwing him breaking off speed pitches, he won't know what to do. Obviously, we'll see, what happens as we go along, but I think this is like I said, something kind of the Angels almost have to do. This is the kind of move that a team like this that is kind of in that projected 500-ish territory. If you want to try to make that bounce upward, this is what you do. You start adding potential impact talent, and you weren't going to get. I can't imagine you were going to get anything better than like an 80 OPS plus and bad defense out of David Fletcher going forward. So, in a sense, why not call up the kid and see what he can do?
There you go. Short answer, Jon Tayler. And let me go ahead and tell this, because you need two Mookie Betts or two Tennessee references on the program to really know that you're listening to the Chase Thomas podcast at any given moment. Did you know Mookie Betts was going to be a volunteer if he didn't go pro at high school?
I did. The Red Sox gave him a very sizable signing bonus to sign directly out of high school.
Yeah, well,
and they were very smart to do so.
Well, disagree and did not enjoy that. So hopefully the same does not happen to Manny Ramirez, his son. Did you know he's committed to the Vols right now?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so we'll see if he gets drafted early enough where he won't do it. But I need that in my life, John. I need Manny Ramirez in the stands with me for a Tennessee baseball game.
You need Manny Ramirez, Tennessee manager.
Oh my goodness, him and Vitello just back co-managing. No, it'd be so much fun. I hope it happens. All that being said, Mookie coming back from paternity leave for the Dodgers, he might play short. It turns out. And that the reason I brought up the Tennessee thing was because that's what he was going to do at the college level. Like he was going to be an infielder, whether that was second or short. That was ultimately what he was probably going to end up with. And I think in the Boston system, that was the plan too, right? And then there was just a need. So he found his way into the outfield and the rest is history. Do I have it right?
That is true. He was initially a second base prospect, a middle infield prospect, but moved to the outfield in part because of the presence of Dustin Pedroia, and then just stuck out there because he turned into a Gold Glove winner in one of the single most difficult outfields to play in. So I think the Red Sox just felt like if it ain't broke, don't mess with it.
Do you like this idea of putting Mookie at short at this point in his career and where the Dodgers are, both in their outfield depth and also just with where their needs are and just where they are as a team at the moment?
So no, I love this just generally. I really am interested to see what Mookie Betts does at shortstop, but I can't imagine that this is what the Dodgers had in mind. And granted, this is in part because their first string shortstop went down in spring training with the season-ending knee injury. Their second string shortstop is currently on the injured list, Miguel Rojas. Their third string shortstop is Chris Taylor, who felt something in his side during a game either yesterday or the day before and is probably going to be out for at least a few days, if not also on the injured list. So Mookie is their fourth string option to a certain degree, probably fifth string if you put him behind whoever it was playing shortstop for the Dodgers today. I think it was Yanni Hernandez or Luke Williams, neither of whom I have ever heard of before. So this is not obviously what the Dodgers want. I think it reflects more than anything an incredible willingness on Mookie Betts' part to do whatever the team needs, and also just a testament to his insane athleticism that this is even a realistic possibility. But I have a really hard time seeing this being any kind of like long-term like solution. It's just not, If anything, it just speaks to a lot, I think, of where the Dodgers are with shortstop. And again, Mookie is like option number 4 or 5. But at this point, option number 1, given that Gavin Lux is not coming back this season, is Miguel Rojas. And that's fine. But again, one of those things where, when we talked about the Dodgers during the offseason, it was that constant refrain of, are they really going to go into the season like this? And that was even before Lux got hurt. And I want to acknowledge there's a difference between the guys the Dodgers were going into the season with, like Miguel Vargas and James Outman, who are, at least legitimate guys who've been developed through that system, versus the kind of feel of, well, let's just sign David Peralta and Jason Hayward and just see what comes of it. That's different. But I think, if anything, Mookie, the fact that Mookie might actually play shortstop is a pretty good sign that the Dodgers are going to need to do something about shortstop if they, for contention purposes. And maybe that is less so the case when, they feel like they have the entire lineup or the entire roster, healthy and clicking in a way that works for them. At the same time, I don't know that I think this team prefers Rojas as a utility option. I don't think they want him starting at shortstop on a regular basis.
Any Saint franchise should want in 2023.
Yes, this is also not necessarily a surprise or some kind of crazy line of thinking that they don't want Miguel Rojas starting on the regular. The problem is, if it's not Rojas starting on the regular, then it's Chris Taylor, which, one, eliminates a lot of the positional versatility that he brings to the team that makes him so valuable, and two, Chris Taylor has hit, and it's early, but he has hit really poorly this season. And he looks like someone who may now be, he's 32 years old, he'll be 33 in August. I think we're looking pretty squarely at the decline phase of Chris Taylor's career. His OPS plus figures the last 3 seasons, 107 in 2021, 87 in 2022, 61 so far this year with 18 strikeouts and 45 plate appearances. That is a ton. And this is Chris Taylor has always struck out a lot, but that is absolutely that's to the point of unplayable. That's a 40% strikeout rate. That's just not doable. So if it's not going to be Chris Taylor, and I'm pretty sure at this point it shouldn't, that's even leaving aside the defensive side of it, where I can imagine that whatever metrics are out there probably do not support Chris Taylor as a starting shortstop, then what's your option? Is it Luke Williams, a waiver claim from the Marlins back in November? Is it Yanni Hernandez, who was bought off of the A's back in December? Is it someone even further down in the system? I don't even think that's necessarily an actual possibility for them. They have their AAA shortstop in the majors right now.
You know who it is, John?
It should have been Trey Turner, but who is it?
It's Javi Baez.
It's okay. Look,
it's Javi Baez.
I'll root for it because I think Baez is genuinely one of those dudes where both the change of scenery and playing for a contending team will bring better out of him. Maybe not the best, but will at least bring better out of him. But if you're the Dodgers, how comfortable do you feel gambling that the solution to your problems at shortstop is Javi Baez? And not just Javi Baez, but the contract that Javi Baez carries. Let me remind you that Javi Baez, he hasn't opted out this winter, but I think he'd be, if he exercises it, I think that's a fair point where you say, Javi, we need to get you into a doctor's office. He is still owed another roughly just over $100 million from here through 2027.
But if there's a team that would eat it.
That's not ideal.
If there was a team who would eat it, it's the Dodgers.
But that's the thing. That's past tense because I don't think this current Dodgers team wants to eat any more payroll. They made such a huge attempt to get under the luxury tax during the offseason, which the Trevor Bauer suspension reduction blew up for them. Regardless, I don't think they have any interest in pushing any further above where they already are relative to the luxury tax because of the penalties that brings, to say nothing of. And I know Baez is just an option, not he's not the only solution, but say they do pick up Baez, that's $100 million committed in the future now that cannot go toward, say, Shohei Ohtani, or toward re-signing Julio Urias, or toward handing an extension to whichever young player they feel needs an extension. I don't know that the most optimal use of the Dodgers' money, if they are in fact now considering it to be a finite pool of resources as opposed to an endless money printing machine, if a guy like Javi Baez is really the most sensible option. So I'll be really interested what the Dodgers do going forward at shortstop because it just can't be Mookie going forward. Just that does not feel realistic to me. Similarly, I don't know how comfortable they would be just saying Miguel Rojas is the starter and that's that. The defense is probably fine. You're not going to get anything offensively out of that. Can the Dodgers survive that? Maybe, but I think they would be better placed to survive that with the rosters they had in years previous. This roster, you're already relying on a bunch of different guys like Outman, like not just Outman and Vargas, where I think they feel better about those guys performing, but guys like, okay, JD Martinez, 36 years old, he's going to turn the clock back, right? Or Jason Hayward, 34 years old, we figured out his swing. David Peralta, 36 years old, well, he can still contribute a bit. Will Smith being on the injured list hurts a little, but Austin Barnes, regular catcher, yeah, we can make that work. Austin Wins? How do the Dodgers have 2 catchers named Austin? That's amazing. Noah Syndergaard, yeah, sure, we can figure that out. He pitched pretty well today, but at the same time, there are a lot of ifs on this Dodgers roster, and I don't know if it is necessary. I don't know if they want to add one more to that pile with, Well, if Rojas stays healthy, we'll get enough out of him, right? That's tough.
But it makes it fun because the Dodgers being their backs against the wall is fascinating. Because I'm very curious to see how Andrew Friedman goes about this, because Jon Tayler, insert police siren here. I like that. It's nice. April 19th, and our Arizona Diamondbacks are in first place in the NL West, John.
With a -7 run differential. I just would like to note that.
That being said, John, we said before the year, they were the ultimate, like, I think the floor is pretty high with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're just too competent. I think they have too many good young pieces. I think they're just going to be, like, there's no way. I didn't see a path for them to be bad. Like, the Rockies, the path to them being awful was quite clear. Mm-hmm. Crystal clear. The Diamondbacks, I thought they were going to flirt with 500. I think you and I said we would not be surprised if this was a wild card contender going into September, October. I don't think they're winning the NL West. So let me put that caveat out there. But I'm not sure there's a bigger benefactor from the Giants already having the season from hell and looking like a team that is going towards the seller's market this summer. I mean, I don't know who's had is there a team in Major League Baseball that's had a worse year for a fan base than the San Francisco Giants thus far? With everything that happened in the offseason and then the start, like, just
Red Sox fans aren't having much more fun, let me tell you that much.
You weren't close to contending. Like, the Giants have overachieved the last couple years, and they thought this offseason was like, hey, we're officially challenging the Dodgers. We paid Logan Webb. We have our ace. We're going to sign Carlos Correa. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're close. We're going to have this moment where it's Giants, Dodgers, going at it, going 90-plus wins. That's not happening. The Giants, I just feel like, Giants fans are just, hug your Giants fans if you know them.
Fun fact, Giants have a better run differential right now than Arizona does.
Yeah, wins only though, John.
Wins only. I mean, look, I think you're right about Arizona, that the floor is high enough that they came into the season as a realistic wild card contender, and so far that looks to be the case, even with half their lineup really is just not hitting at all, like including Christian Walker, including Gabriel Moreno, including Alec Thomas, including Jake McCarthy. So far, it really has been the Josh Rojas and Corbin Carroll show, which is kind of strange, with some minor contributions from Ketel Marte. Similarly, pitching-wise, Zach Gallen is off to a great start again. Merrill Kelly has looked really good. Ryan Nelson has been solid. I think the big problem there is Madison Bumgarner, who got absolutely torched today and has an ERA over 10. I really wonder how much longer Arizona can keep going with that. Similarly, in the fifth spot right now, that's Dre Jameson, who looked really good as a multi-inning reliever, less so as a starter. Curious at what point Arizona decides to call up Brandon Pfaadt, their number one pitching prospect. I have to imagine it's sooner rather than later, again, between Bumgarner's horrible struggles and Jameson maybe being better suited to relief than anything else. That Pfaadt is there waiting potentially is I think that's a big option that they have going forward. Regardless, I think what you like about Arizona is offensively, this is a pretty steady team, even with a bunch of guys slumping right now. I don't think Christian Walker is going to have a sub 600 OPS all season. I don't think Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy are going to have a combined OPS plus of 67 the entire season. One of those guys might actually be the second coming of Jackie Bradley Jr., but regardless, I don't think the other is going to be an exact clone of that. We shall see. And I do like what they have pitching staff-wise. I think if there are a few areas of concern for the Diamondbacks, like I said, the back of the rotation is one right now. And realistically, I don't, Merrill Kelly has an ERA under 3 and a FIP over 4. I can tell you which one I think is going to be more reflective of him going forward. Similarly, Ryan Nelson, an ERA of 3.71, a FIP of 4.55, not really striking anyone out. I do wonder, again, Pfaadt is an option for them to call up. I do wonder if they do need to make another move somewhere in there, if they do want to get another starter. But right now they have a good bench that they can deploy in many ways. Pavin Smith has been really great for them as a lefty bat off the bench. Evan Longoria has looked good as a kind of more of like a kind of the second starter at third base behind Josh Rojas. Nick Ahmed and Geraldo Perdomo are switching off at shortstop and doing a very nice job there. But I think you're probably looking at, they want to probably get another pitcher back. I don't know if it's going to be Zach Davies, but he's on the shelf for at least a little bit longer. Similarly, bullpen-wise, Andrew Chafin has been good, but the rest of that group has not been particularly great. I think that was probably the area of most concern coming into the season for the Diamondbacks. They have not really had a good bullpen in the last few seasons. I think it continues so far. Good news is obviously a bullpen is one of the easier things to quote unquote fix. That's something where you make a couple trades for a couple relievers, shouldn't cost them too much from their farm system, and it is a pretty good productive farm system right now. Obviously, it just put out they called up Carroll, they have Thomas, they have Jameson. I've now said Brandon Pfaadt's name roughly 6,000 times. Jordan Lawler further down in their system, and obviously the big name there is number 1 pick Drew Jones, who will eventually. I mean, that is
a junior if you're Drew Jones, because I've been wondering this. It's like if there's no way Drew Jones is not short for Andrew Jones Jr.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do wonder if that's a decision on his part though, that he wants to be Drew Jones and not Andrew Jones Jr. because that's a tough one. You're right. His full name. If
you're Fernando Tatis Jr., do you want to be just rename yourself coming back to the league?
And
because you're getting booed a lot.
He could be Nando.
Ooh.
Nando the Relentless, because he never relents.
That's the final maybe move. Like the chaos move is Fernando Tatis to the Dodgers, John.
I thought you were going to say the final move is Fernando Tatis 2. Like literally he renames himself Fernando Tatis the second.
That would be cool.
That would actually kind of rule. And for what it's worth, Drew Jones's full name is in fact Andrew Jones.
Okay. So you get to decide basically if you're
and I think I look, that's fair play to him. Like that, I think that is, if you want to try to stand out from your super famous dad who was a literal like probable Hall of Famer, different name might help.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think, and like you said, what helps Arizona a lot is that, yes, there is competition in the NL West. There's the Dodgers, there are the Padres, who have not gone off to a great start, but, I think with the talent that's on that team and with
Machado and company are not going to hit this poorly all season long.
No, I wouldn't expect that. And I think regardless of how San Diego looks, I think you can always be certain that AJ Preller will do literally anything in his capacity to add whatever he feels like he needs to add.
Darvish has been awesome.
Darvish has been great.
Blake
Snell kind of bad, but they got Joe Musgrove coming back on Saturday finally. That's going to be a big boost for them. They got Tatis coming back. Obviously, it's going to be an enormous boost as well, given how he just tortured AAA pitching for like 2 straight weeks.
And the fan base.
The fan base
that he was going around.
On the flip side of things, Colorado is a terrible team, and I don't think they're going to be anywhere near contention. And San Francisco, like I said, for as much as they have a better run differential than Arizona right now, a team that does not look complete, I think, in a sense, that has a lot of holes on the roster, that has an offense that has not really produced all that much, but I think if nothing else, the space is there for Arizona to make some kind of run. The problem they're going to run into obviously is that of course it's early, but the NL wildcard race, if you were to look at the teams in the league right now, and also who's theoretically going to be in that contention, you're talking about whoever's losing the East, which right now is the Mets, the Phillies, and Miami, which has looked, well, Miami's above 500, but they also have a run differential of -26, which is the second worst in the National League, so that's probably not going to hold on.
Speaking of, can I tell you there's a random super Miami Marlins fan in Knoxville, Tennessee that I ran into last night, John?
That's delightful.
It was so weird. Like I heard someone yell cheering for a Jazz Chisholm 3-run homer last night as I'm watching Tennessee on one TV and the Hawks on the other, and I'm like, what in the world is happening? Who's yelling about? And there was a super fan. I never thought I'd see like a Miami Marlins super fan in Knoxville, but they exist.
Was it the financial criminal Jeffrey Loria?
It was not.
Okay,
he was a younger guy. Yeah.
But beyond the Mets and the Phillies, you also have the NL Central contenders. So right now that looks like Chicago, and I know I said St. Louis is not going to make the playoffs, but they're the Cardinals. I'm not going to say never.
No, stick with take graphs, John. Stick with the take. You can't go back on the take a week after.
And then there's Pittsburgh. Do you know who is tied for the most runs scored in the National League right now? The Pittsburgh Pirates.
Go Pirates.
Go Pirates. Guys, the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Does Brian Reynolds get a statue if he stays?
I think he gets to become mayor of Pittsburgh.
Right.
And then, of course, like we mentioned, in the rest of the NL West, the Dodgers and the Padres, and if they can figure it out, the Giants. There are a lot of potential contending teams in there.
Yeah.
But like we were saying with before, these games matter, these wins matter, and Arizona is already off to an well, I guess no. The MLB is counting counting the game they played against St. Louis today, where St. Louis demolished them. Mm-hmm. They're at 11-8 right now. Those games count. So, and I think, do I expect the Diamondbacks to be, World Series contender, division contender? No, not particularly. Do I expect them to be in the thick of the wild card race? Yeah, I think so.
The last thing here, John, as we wrap up with our Wednesday night edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, and the dog is back.
The dog is here. He was crying, so
I heard him a little bit. And what was his name again?
I wanted Ezra. This is
Ezra. That's right. Ezra. I like it. Hey, Ezra. Yeah. There you go. Out of context, Chase Thomas Podcast. You love it. John, this should make you feel good. He'll be position player F4 leaders as of Monday morning. I jotted this down when I was looking through some stuff this week. Ron Acuna Jr., he's in the top 3, obviously. Wander Franco, and let me look. Hold on, let me squint. Hold on, John. It's an X name. Xander.
Why are we doing this? Why?
Xander
Bogaerts? What did I do to deserve these kinds of horrid
Is that
realities?
Right? Xander Bogaerts, was he at Red Sox? And then, hold on, let me see something else. This is from MLB.com. Quote, let me get this right. Before Sunday, no Sox starter had gone more than 5 innings, marking the first time in the club's history that happened in the first 15 games of a season.
Not just that, the Red Sox were the last team in Major League Baseball to have a starter go 6 innings.
Oh, my God.
The rotation's been a bit of a problem, to say the least.
Whitlock looks good, though, right?
Yeah, Garrett Whitlock had a great second start.
Yeah.
He didn't look good in his first start, but that was right off the injured list after a pretty limited spring training. So I'm going to give him a mulligan on that one. I think the big thing for me, Red Sox-wise, going forward, the state of the rotation is Chris Sale's start on Tuesday against the Twins. 6 innings, 11 strikeouts. Obviously, the strikeout numbers are great, but what I really loved about that start was the velocity. Throwing 93, 94 on the regular, maxing at 96. That's not necessarily the Chris Sale of old, but it's way better than the Chris Sale that they had gotten through the first 3 starts of the season and what they had gotten in limited doses post-Tommy John. That is going to be, if there's a chance for this Red Sox team to contend, and I don't really think that there is much of one. Again, our postseason odds right now have Boston with a 21.2% chance of making the playoffs. Not great. But I do think if there is any road to this team contending in any capacity whatsoever, it has to involve a healthy Chris Sale who is throwing as close to the old Chris Sale as he can get. So that was really good to see out of him yesterday. Rest of the concerns, not a great pitching staff, getting nothing out of Masataka Yoshida or Tristan Casas right now, which is a little bit of a problem. But hey, with as badly as this team has played to a certain degree, especially given how they got steamrolled by Tampa, 500 right now, only 6.5 games out of first place, only a game and a half out of a second wild card spot.
Don't do this, John. The AL East is not happening. Oh my God, John! Don't do this to yourself.
They have a better run differential than not a whole lot of teams at +3, but it's still plus. Still positive run differential.
I didn't think we'd get positive John here.
I mean, look, there are a lot of qualifiers on my positivity, but I will just at least recognize that when it comes to Sale in particular, who had looked very, very bad so far, that he looked not just better, but looked better in a way that is hopefully sustainable. That if that velocity increase sticks, that's sustainable. That is something that should make him better going forward.
There you go. John, the final team for us here in our team spotlight, the Colorado Rockies. What has happened in the last week? Are they getting worse? What's going on with the Rockies? What's our Rockies check-in look like here?
Well, they lost today to the Pirates 13-1, so there's that. I watched Austin Gomber give up, I think every ball hit in play against him except for one was hit 95 miles an hour or harder. So that's
not
great.
A real name. Say that one more time.
Austin Gomber. He was one of the big pieces that they got back from the Cardinals in the Nolan Arenado trade, which is low-key going down as one of the worst trades of the last decade.
Who could have ever seen that one?
I know, just everyone at the time.
The Rockies losing a trade?
The Rockies losing a trade that everyone at the time was like, this is a terrible decision that you guys have made. Yeah, I don't know what Rockies check-in there needs to be beyond. This is a franchise that still doesn't know what it's doing. Or at least thinks it knows. I don't know if what's worse, doesn't know what it's doing or thinks it knows what it's doing, but in reality does not know what it's doing. The Rockies don't know what they're doing. Whatever progress they make when it comes to stuff like, they let Ezekiel Tovar, a rookie, start the season at shortstop instead of plugging in some washed up veteran and holding him down in the minor leagues for absolutely no reason. Great. But then Tovar comes out and has an OPS of 450 through the early part of the season. And again, it's early, but it's and that's not the Rockies' fault, but I don't know. This team.
Can we mention some of this? So they have exactly 3 good hitters, and it's Elias Diaz, Charlie Blackmon, and Chris Bryant. That's it right now.
Chris Bryant, who just the other day hit his first home run at Coors Field as a Rockies player. again, this is not a franchise that knows what it's doing.
John, Jerks and Profar, awful. Harold Castro, awful. CJ Crone, awful. You don't need that. Ryan McMahon, awful.
And like some of these,
Mike Moustakas, awful.
But it's the thing, some of these guys will be better. I think Ryan McMahon and CJ Crone should be better. But like on the other hand, like what are you realistically expecting out of Mike Moustakas? Out of Elias Diaz? Out of a 49-year-old Charlie Blackmon? Like out of Jerks and Profar, who didn't sign until late March? Like,
I think Jose Urena might be bad.
He's one of the worst pitchers in baseball, and yet the Rockies, for some reason, decided that he was a good idea to shove into their rotation. Again, like, this is just, I don't know, at a certain point, like, what fascinates me about Colorado is, like, where, like, I want, like, a detailed breakdown of all the, like, I think what I'm trying to say is, it feels like a combination of so many different things that even if you just magically made the Rockies better at player development, they're still not going to be a good team because they're still bad at evaluating free agents. They're bad at developing pitchers. They're bad at everything. They're just bad at everything. And I think your Rockies check-in is basically the same as it's been for a bit now. Until and unless the ownership situation of this team changes and the Monforts are no longer in charge because they are very clearly Artie Moreno level meddlers and idiots. I think until they're no longer in charge, you shouldn't expect any different from this team. What I'm really curious to see is when does the attendance start to get impacted? This is a team that consistently has drawn well over the last pretty much forever, despite these teams not being any good in the last really 15 years, largely because of the fact that going to a Rockies game is just a fun time. You know, Coors is a great ballpark. It's a really nice experience. You get a cool view of the mountains and you get to drink a lot and it's whatever. But today's attendance for their game against the Pirates, granted a Wednesday matinee against a projected last place team that has no stars, they only drew about 19,000 people, one of their lowest attendance figures in the last 20 years of Rockies baseball. You know, and I don't really see much reason to think that this Rockies team is going to give people any particular specific reason to come to the ballpark. You know, there's not a pitcher you're coming to see on any given night. There's not a hitter on the level of like an Ohtani where you're like, ooh, I have to see this guy. This guy is the best hitter on the team is probably Chris Bryant. Nobody's coming to the ballpark to see Chris Bryant. I mean, I would probably go to the ballpark to see Chris Bryant, but that's because he's dreamy. Those eyes? Exactly. But
it's pretty dreamy.
I think that this is going to be the real thing that tells us where the Rocky or what happens to the Rockies going forward, because if those attendance numbers really do start to slip and they stay below kind of what's been expected, that has to have some kind of impact somewhere. And I think what's helped the Monforts kind of dodge a lot of the kind of, we'll call it bad press, but deservedly so, that has been directed the way of like Bob Nutting and the Pirates or some of the other like cheapo franchises in baseball, is the fact that they keep drawing well attendance-wise, that people are still going to the games.
Because it's a great place to go watch a game.
It's a great place to go watch a game.
Gorgeous, like it should be great.
I've been there. It's a fantastic place to watch the game. But if that is the lone reason that people have been coming, and that's now giving way because people are like, look, like at a certain point, like we need something worth watching, and the Rockies aren't giving us anything worth watching, then maybe that changes how the Monforts are viewed. But I mean, I don't know.
What's the most random night? Like we were talking about to bring it all home here, like the. Some sort of random Colorado Rockies, like Brad Hopp night. Do you go Jeff Francis night? What could we do to get butts in seats? What's the most random thing they could do that's Colorado Rocky friendly?
Well, they have Ryan Spilborghs as their color guy on their broadcast. Yeah. Just do a Spilly night. Have it be in conjunction with Twitter and SB Nation legend @IamSpilly.
Okay.
Have him and Ryan Spilborghs make a disgusting meal together. I think that would be great.
That would be great. I like that. Jon Tayler, as we wrap your Fangraphs pick of the week that everyone should go check out if they have not already.
My Fangraphs pick of the week for the thing I've liked most so far through the week, I really like Jay Jaffe breaking down Salt Lake City's surprising bid for a major league
He's
expansion.
from there, right?
He is from Salt Lake City, so that gives him, I think he has a personal connection that he explored. He's also one of the few people I've seen bring up one of the really big X factors for Salt Lake City, and it feels really weird saying this, but the fact that the Great Salt Lake is literally drying up and releasing toxic particles into the atmosphere as it does so.
Yeah.
Not sure how Major League Baseball deals with that. There are many reasons that a Salt Lake City Major League Baseball expansion team would be unprecedented, I think is definitely one word. Very unexpected for sure. But Jay does a really good job going through all the reasons and all the potential pitfalls, not just the Great Salt Lake issue, but also the fact that Salt Lake City is about 4,300 feet above sea level, so you'd immediately run into a potential cores issue. The fact that Salt Lake City is a growing city and a growing metropolitan area, but still one of the smaller ones in the United States.
Could they dome it?
That's the other part of it is, there are a lot of big backers for this potential bid. The Miller family that owned the Jazz.
I was going to say, they're owned by somebody else now, right?
Yeah, they were sold to a different Utah businessman a few years ago.
Yeah, I think his son took it over.
Yeah.
Smith. I think it's Smith.
Yeah.
I think Smith.
The Miller family is behind this bid, so they're they were great stewards for the Jazz throughout their ownership of that team.
Yeah.
But
it's probably also a competent franchise. Like, it's probably like good history there.
Probably
with the Jazz.
But I think
probably good turnout.
The question then comes up too is, well, who's going to pay for the ballpark? Again, is this going to be private money or
the taxpayers of Salt Lake City? We know the answer to that one, Jon Tayler.
We do, but it'll be curious to see how that works with the city. Like, how on board is the city of Salt Lake, the city of Salt Lake City? How on board is the local government there with regards to doing what would need to be done financially to build a 35,000 plus seat major league caliber stadium? So Jay gets into all of that. I think if you're at all interested or curious about, if you saw that news item and were like, Salt Lake City, give Jay's piece a read. It'll definitely give you all the details you need. And like we said, Jay is from Salt Lake City, so I think he brings a particular viewpoint that I haven't seen elsewhere. The expansion market,
a good writer, so read Jay. Yeah.
The expansion market is a fascinating one right now between
Salt Lake City, a battle, right? There's got to be
Portland, Nashville, Vegas, Montreal.
I feel like I don't think they get both, right? Salt Lake and Vegas. I don't think Vegas and Salt Lake work. I don't think Major League Baseball wants that.
I think only one of them gets it because whoever gets it has to be slotted into both teams would have to be slotted into a Western division.
Yeah.
And not only that, but they effectively, and I'm sure that whoever gets it would make the argument that Utah is now part of their media market.
Yeah. I just feel like the A's are going to push back against this. Like the A's are going to be like, no.
Well, the other side of the expansion stuff is, of course, the fact that Rob Manfred has already said, we're not doing expansion until Tampa and Oakland get their stadium situations resolved.
Yeah.
Oakland, that looks like it's going to be just moving to Las Vegas at some point.
Does that mean Tampa moves to Montreal full time?
They already floated that absolutely insane two-city plan that was just...
That's what I'm saying. I just feel like it ends with Montreal. Like, clearly there is a Montreal interest, and they're just...
There is, but the city government up there has shown no interest in paying for that. They have no interest whatsoever in putting out any public financing for that stadium. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, maybe there's discussion eventually of, okay, Utah, you can have a team, but it's just going to be the Rays. We're just going to move the Rays out there or something.
Or... just build a stadium somewhere in Tampa Bay with your own money, Tampa Bay Rays, and then also stay in the Bay, Oakland A's. What if you just did that? What if you just built one of the 19 different sample pictures we've seen in the last 25 years on Twitter and message boards and everything else? I feel like I have seen so many concept art stadiums for the Rays and A's. Just amazing. I'd be so infuriated if I was a fan of any of it.
Yeah, imagine if the A's just clean the possums out of the stadium.
Oh my god. Just the bare minimum. Feral cat situation.
Yeah, maybe we just don't have wildlife in the stadium on the regular basis. That feels like a good option.
It's unbelievable. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure, my friend. And you stay safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I will talk to you next Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.